guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's TheSketchMonkey here. I'm here at McDonald Mazda in Denver to have a look at the car there. I've been waiting ever since I first saw this in photos. I wanted to see this in person, specifically in this artisan red metallic paint that is absolutely stunning. This is, of course, the 2024 Mazda CX90. This is the top of the line trim level. So what we're going to do in this video is, of course, have a look at this beautiful Kodo design that we have going on here in the front, side, rear, interior, and then we're going to take this for a drive. Before we jump in and talk about this design, let's have a look at some of the basic spec and tech of this Artisan Red 2024 Mazda CX90. You have a 3.3 liter turbo inline 6, putting out 340 horsepower and 370 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds. It's connected to an 8-speed automatic. You got all-wheel drive. Fuel economy sits at 23 city and 28 highway. The price for this one is $62,000. Starting with the front end of the CX90, I love what's going on here, and I've said it so many times before. I'm really a huge fan of what Mazda is doing across their entire lineup right now, simplifying their design by still having a very, very strong brand identity. Look at the grille pattern here and how the grille itself has this nice curvature to it, and following the rest of the surfacing in the front end. We also have a couple of chrome trim pieces here, as you can see, which I would not want to change because I think chrome in this version, in this big brother CX90, it actually looks really cool. Now, what Mazda has managed to do really well across the entire lineup is to have this smooth surfacing intersected by a couple of sharp lines that you see here. What's interesting about this, when I first saw this, is the integration of the headlight, because the headlight sits sunken in to the front end. It looks really cool with the small little L-shaped daytime running lights and the big adaptive LED headlights inside here, the high beams at the lower section, and then I also love this integration of the indicator right here. This is also part of the daytime running lights, and I think it looks good breaking up this chrome section, the chrome trim that we have going around the grille. It looks very nice, and it suits this design to have it be on the big brother in the lineup. Moving further down on the front end, there are a couple of things that I might want to change here. I'm not entirely sure yet, and that has to do with this chrome trim piece here. I think it's too abruptly ended in this area on both sides. Obviously, it doesn't feel like a natural flow for the chrome to just end right here. But what I do like in the front end is that we have functional air curtains on the sides here, and they're pretty big actually to help reduce that overall drag that you have when you have a big front fascia like we have on the CX90. Coming around to the side view of the CX90, and this is probably my favorite view of this car because I love these surfacing details and the sculpting that Mazda is doing right now. Specifically when we have a sun shining on it like this, you can see all the surfacing here and the beautiful flow that we have going from the front fender into the side and then into the rear fender as well. We do have the same type of chrome trim down here. We also have some in the rear end that comes in the front end as well. So we have a connection with the trim pieces. However, I do like that they chromed this piece up here, but at the bottom part you have a black trim piece instead of having this be chrome as well. It sort of creates a nice base for the greenhouse itself to sit on. Now, Mazda usually puts very thin tires onto their vehicles, but not in the CX90. I'm really glad they did. All around here you have 275mm wide tire, even in the front end, with this beautiful 21-inch wheel. I do like the trim and the design of this wheel because it's not entirely black. You still have a couple of accent silver pieces on the faces of the spokes, creating some contrast in the wheel so you can actually see and appreciate the wheel design of this car. These type of wheels are wheels that I probably would not want to switch out because I feel they have the elegance that suits the rest of the body of the CX90. We have to talk about the proportions of this thing. It's absolutely stunning. We do have, this being the big brother, we do have sort of a shoulder line going right here, but look at the volumes in this area, in the backside, and the roundedness, almost bubbly feeling in the rear, but it doesn't look bad. It looks fantastic. I also love the greenhouse, how it slopes down very quickly and have this sharp corner in the front end. So what this does, when you look at the greenhouse and the sloping roofline of this thing, it feels like this volume with the wheels, the big 21-inch wheels, feels like it's already moving forward when it's standing still. Coming around to the equally stunning rear end of the CX90, and here you can clearly see this round shape that we have here. There are a couple of things that I would want to experiment with when it comes to the rear end design of this thing. I do like how the headlights stretch pretty far in here, but this is one detail that I want to experiment with in just a second. First of all, let's have a look at the lower section. Here we have the same chrome piece, trim pieces that we have in the side and the front coming back in the rear end. And again, I feel like having the logo, for example, chrome, some chrome pieces down here, I feel it suits the overall vibe of this car. And then we have, of course, a power tailgate. Just have to press the button and it opens up. And then when you're ready to close it, all you got to do is just press this button right here and it closes right back down. One detail back here, down here at the very low section of the rear end that I'm glad that Mazda did not fall for is to create some sort of fake vents here in the rear end, because this car, it's a very elegant and almost luxurious vehicle, so it doesn't have to have any fake stuff and trying to be something that it's not. I also like that we don't even see the tailpipes right here. Having it be like this, all covered up, it adds to this elegance of this vehicle. Now, there are a couple of small, tiny details that I would like to experiment with here and redesign the rear end. First of all, this wiper on a car in this price level and as elegant as everything on this car is, I wish the wiper just wasn't here and instead was mounted up here, but I don't think the roof spoiler is big enough to house it. That's change number one. I want to remove that and have it be housed underneath there to add to the elegance of the rear end. Moving further down, these taillights, as I said before, I kind of like the design of these taillights. They look very high-end, but maybe they're stretching a little too far into the center logo. I'm not sure. This is one of these details that I just want to play around with and see if it actually looks better if we move in this bar that we have stretching almost half a light bar and just make it a little bit shorter. Welcome to the interior of the brand new 2024 Mazda CX90, and man, oh man, have they stepped it up in here with the quality of this design. It's absolutely stunning, and this is the same spec I think I would choose, because the spec with this artisan red in the exterior with this sandy, beachy vibe that you have in this interior, it's absolutely stunning. So let's fire it up before I die of dehydration. Let's turn the AC on. Very easy to do because you have all the buttons for it, physical buttons down here, so you see exactly what you're doing. But let's talk about these screens for a second. We have a properly integrated gauge cluster right here with a 12.3 inch all digital, fully digital gauge cluster. Right now the layout is very traditional. You have the tachometer to the left, the speedometer in the middle, fuel gauge and temp gauge on the right side. Looking very crisp and nice. I like the black with the white numbers and dials that we have here. It creates a nice contrast for it. Here we also have a 12.3 inch infotainment screen that you control with this little knob right here. This is not a touch screen, it's just a screen that sits on top of the dash. Pretty old school, and I kind of like it. I'm not sure why, but it's very easy to learn this system because it's pretty intuitive how you control everything here. And the thing is, there is nothing too complicated about the settings here. They didn't add a lot of settings just for having more settings into the system. You can adjust everything you need in these settings, and that's exactly what I want. Cars today are becoming too complex, at least in my opinion, with 140 settings for the interior lighting and so on. It's just getting a bit overwhelming, so I really appreciate Mazda for doing it like this. And I also like the integration of this because it sits very low. It's a wide screen, so you stretch it the 12.3 inches out this way so it doesn't block any view above the hood. Moving further down, you have the big hazard light right here in the middle, surrounded by this suede material that feels very nice to touch. And further down, you have all the controls for the climate control, all physical. Even the vents are pretty traditionally stylized, easy to use and very easy to adjust exactly where you want the air to flow out from. You have the buttons for the temp right here on the side, on each side of course, the heated steering wheel, heated and cooled seats, and you have this fan speed here and some additional climate settings. Down here you do have a wireless charging pad which has an angle to it, so it feels like the phones are not gonna be sliding around because of this angle. You also have a 12-volt cigarette outlet right next to it. And look at the trim here in this center console. Absolutely gorgeous with this almost wood fiber, but I'm sure this is not wood. It feels like plastic. Opening this up, and you do have two cup holders underneath this beautiful lid, and you have the drive drive mode selector here. So the drive modes you have are sport, normal, and off-road, and that's it. You don't need any other settings than that, really. Moving along on the center console, you do have the gear selector here, pretty easy to use. It looks stubby and feels pretty good to hold in your hand. You have the hill descent control, and clicking this camera will pop up the cameras. You have the 360 to the right. You have the backup camera up top, and you have some side cameras on the side of the reverse camera. Very nice camera system from Mazda in the CX90. Specifically, if you're worried about someone scratching your wheels, you do have specific camera angles where you can see exactly the position of the wheels themselves. In the middle here, you do have this knob to control all of these settings in the infotainment screen. You also have the auto hold button and the volume controls for the stereo. This is a split armrest, so you can choose to open just one side, or you can open the other one, or you can choose to open both of them like this. And inside here you have a padded section to store whatever you want. You have a couple of USB-Cs, a small little LED lamp there to see what's in here when it's dark out. Moving on to these seats, absolutely stunning what they did here. They kept the same color for the dash onto the seat, with the rest of the interior being blacked out, and the artisan exterior. This spec is just absolutely fantastic. This is also the launch spec for this specific trim model. You have this black thing going in the middle to contrast a little bit all the cream that's going on here, looking very nice. You have some nice bolstering to them, and they're of course both power adjustable. Moving on to the steering wheel, the cool thing about this steering wheel is that it looks like the steering wheel that we have in the MX-5, the Mazda 3, but with a bunch of different high-end materials applied onto that same shape. And I think it looks great with the contrast between these chrome pieces, taking an inspiration from the outside chrome pieces and adding some of that in here, with the buttons for the cruise control on the right side and the buttons for the stereo on the left. On the left side of the steering wheel, you have a couple of more features. For example, the parking assist buttons and the traction control. You also have the memory seats for the seats up front, located right here on the left side, with an additional vent, obviously. Talking about the doors, looking really nicely sculpted as well. I do like that it has a connection to what's going on here. So the the dash itself has a connection to the door when you close the door, in the styling of the pieces, trim pieces that we have in the door itself. Very nicely done. And you have the same cream on the doors as well, with the contrast stitching in the door handle. Up top, you have a absolutely massive panoramic sunroof that goes all the way back to the headrests of the second row. I'm gonna close this now because, as you know, it's very hot right now and I don't want to burn inside of this CX90. That would be a very unfortunate ending to this video. Let's check out the back seat and see if I can fit behind my own driving position. I probably can, this being the big brother CX90. All right, jumping into the back, or the second row of the CX90, and I have plenty of space back here, just as I expected. You do have a pocket up front, cup holders in the middle, another version of this split center armrest in the middle here as well. Very soft touch materials on this armrest. Down here you do have the climate control settings for the second row, with heated and cooled seats in this row as well. Very, very fancy, with of course the vents up top and a couple of USB-C ports. Now you do also have a third row here, which is super easy to just fold down, or if you want to fold them back up, you can do that by pulling in this strap right here. But if you want more luggage space, all you gotta do is pull it and push it, and boom, you have a ton of space back here. All right, setting off in the 2024 Mazda CX90 S Premium Plus. So this is the top of the line trim level for this vehicle. And just sitting in here, it feels like I'm sitting in something that is a lot more upscale than a Mazda. But maybe that's what Mazda is these days. They have morphed into this luxurious brand that feels a lot more value than what you're actually paying for it. This costs $62,000, and I think this one is worth every penny of that. I have the drive mode set to sport now, meaning that the gauges are all red and angry. Hopefully we're gonna get the opportunity to do at least one pull here. There, as I said, there's a lot of road work in this area. The ride though, over this bumpy road here, very, very comfortable and super smooth, as you would expect for this big brother CX90. Let's turn right here, and hopefully we're gonna not have as much traffic on this stretch right here. So let's push it here and see what this inline six got. It sounds really good. So we have a turbocharged inline-six up front with 340 horsepower, 0 to 60 in about 6.5 seconds. But this is also a very heavy car. So 340 horsepower doesn't necessarily feel super quick. But again, this is more angled towards luxury than sport. So it still feels very good to drive this thing, and it's so comfortable. I think one weird thing here in the interior is that Mazda went with a non-touchscreen in a $62,000 car. That's a pretty bold decision by Mazda to have it like that. But as I said, this is not one of these very confusing systems that we have in a bunch of other cars. This is super easy to just learn how this works. So at least it's not that complicated to not have the touchscreen here. So let's check out the turning radius in this big SUV. And it feels like I can keep turning the wheel almost to an unnatural position. The turning radius is fantastic in this thing. It definitely sounds good, this inline-six, and it's hard to make an inline-six sound bad. I mean, most inline-sixes that I can think of sound really good, and this is no exception. It's also 3.3 liters, so it's a pretty big one with turbochargers on it. So let's go ahead and put it into normal and see if that does anything to the overall feel of the drive. Now we have very traditional looking dials, which they look classy because, as I said, it's a black background with some white numbers on it, looking very nice. Which one would I buy though? Would I buy the new Highlander from Toyota, or would I buy this CX90? I'm pretty sure I would go for this one, the CX90. I just love the styling of this thing. I think Mazda is on a roll when it comes to design right now. Every single car they put out looks fantastic. I can't wait to see what the new Miata is gonna look like, for example. I think it's gonna be a very cool design. So if I were to choose between the Highlander and this one, I'm definitely gonna go with Mazda. I'm really not sure what the difference is between normal and sport, because they both sound the same and they both feel like they're pulling equally hard. The only thing that I notice visually is changed is the gauges. Overall, an absolutely fantastic job by Mazda to replace the CX-9 with this beautiful thing on wheels. And huge thanks to McDonald Mazda here in Denver for providing this vehicle for me to review for you guys today. If you're interested in this vehicle or any other vehicle that we have here on the lot, make sure you visit the link down in the description. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.